Hello and welcome to another episode of From Borderline to Beautiful. I am your host, Rose Skeeters, and today I wanted to talk about something that I think many people experience in order to help give you hope in your recovery journey. Next week, I have an exciting episode with an expert in mentalization based treatment. And I thought that would be very helpful. I love it. And it was key in my own recovery. And I thought I'd bring someone in to talk about it. And he has a workbook out. It's going to be great. So check back next week to listen in. That'll be another video podcast. Today, what I want to talk about is the pain of creating a life worth living. Sometimes lived experiences and me sharing my story can be valuable to people in recovery, so I've been told. And I thought I would do that today as a midweek check in. So, we talk a lot about the beginning of recovery, where you have the diagnosis, and that's painful. It's painful to uncover all of the truths and to gain more self awareness that you need in your recovery journey. And there's spirals and distress tolerance skills and all of that. And then once we move along and we have to then create a life worth living, right? Which is something that DBT tells us. We also have then the pain of reestablishing or being rooted in our new identity. And the borderline brain, I've said this often, it craves significance and certainty. Significance you can think of as validation and people saying that you're worthy and people seeing you for who you are, feeling seen. And then certainty is your need to know what the future will bring, what's going to come, what's next, what the outcome will be. And when you value significance and certainty and you're trying to reestablish yourself and you're trying to stay rooted in a new identity and to create a life worth living, that brings a whole other level of uncertainty because prior to that, you might have thought that you weren't worthy of anything. So now you're supposed to maybe make a big life move or leave a relationship or let go of things that aren't good for you or start a new job or a new school or a new program or travel or any of those things. And you know that you need to do these things because you know that they are a part of you reestablishing yourself, of having an identity that gives you that life worth living. And you also are terrified. Well, what do you do? First, I want to say if this is you and this is how you're feeling, I want you to know that you haven't regressed. It doesn't mean that you haven't progressed at all in recovery. What it does mean is that you might have to go back and use some of those skills that got you to where you are to regroup and to have hope. Marsha Linehan had this wonderful imagery that I love for this time in recovery. And it's essentially this imagery of falling off a cliff and then grabbing onto one branch. And then you let go and you grab onto the next, and you let go and you grab onto the next. And so essentially you're free falling, but just grabbing on to the next branch and the next branch and the next branch a little at a time until I imagine you're held at the bottom. Sometimes life is that way, that you just feel like you're free falling, but you just take the next right step. So if you feel like you're at a place in your life where you have to reestablish yourself in a new place, a new space, or a new scenario, or at the end of the summer, you're going to school or what have you, and you feel terrified, I want you to know that you can regroup. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 deep breaths from our diaphragm. We're going to practice just this moment, just this breath. And at the top of our breath, we're going to do a physiological sigh. Shout out to Andrew Huberman. You can check out the benefits of the physiological sigh, link it to his name. I can even link a video in the show notes. So let's do that right now. Feel grounded in your chair and take a deep breath in. Just this moment. And breathe out just this breath. Let's do it again. Breathe in just this moment. Breathe out just this breath. And finally, breathing in just this moment and out just this breath. Okay, we're here. Maybe you're catastrophizing. Maybe you think that you're not going to be able to reestablish yourself. Let's use our DBT emotion regulation handout 8. It's also worksheet 5. Let's check the facts. Many emotions and actions are set off by our thoughts and our interpretation of events, not by the event itself. If you're on the precipice of a new place in your life, a new decision of creating a life worth living, you know that you need to be here. And you've made some decisions that you know are the right decisions that are in line with your moral value system, your framework for living. And so our emotions can have a big effect on our thoughts about events. Remember, we have an event, we have our thoughts, and then we have our emotions. So when we examine our thoughts and we check the facts, it can help us change our emotions. So let's get a reminder today of how can we check the facts. I want you to ask yourself, what is the emotion that I want to change? Are you scared? Are you overwhelmed? Are you worried? Are you terrified? Are you nervous? Are you grieving? Find what emotion and what definition that emotion has so that you can ask yourself what you want to change. I remember when I was changing from being someone who always thought my relationships would end, from being someone who lived in chaos, to being someone who tried to embrace the process of life and start to detach from the outcome. I would describe myself as nervous, as scared. And if I ask myself now, what is the event that is prompting that emotion? I would want to describe the facts that I can observe through my senses. And I would want to challenge any judgments or absolutes or black and white descriptions. So I might describe the facts through my senses as I want to the prompting event for my emotion is changing, moving out of the home that I am in and moving into this different home where I can take even my move to Michigan. Moving from Philadelphia, a place that I know, with streets that I know, with businesses that I know, and people that I know, in a culture that I know, to the Midwest. And I was scared and I was nervous. And I felt in my body a tight chest. I felt a heavy weight on my back. I felt my skin feeling clammy. And then I had to challenge my judgments like, this isn't going to work out. Everything is awful. I'm so uncertain that I might as well just die because it's easier to die than it is to get up and to live and to take those steps. I can challenge my black or white thinking like, it's going to be awful. I'm not going to make any friends. I'm not going to be successful. Can challenge all of those things because the reality is I didn't know what life would be like on the other side. I only knew that the mountain that I had to climb to create a life worth living was huge. And I had to be careful because if you're a black and white describer or if you're an absolute, like I'm not doing that kind of a person, then you're rigidly creating certainty out of your uncertainty that puts you in a position that you're choosing your old behaviors and your old self without maybe even knowing it. So what are we going to ask next? Remember our handout. What are my interpretations, thoughts, and assumptions about the event? Well, that things are going to be awful, that they're not going to work out, that I'm not worthy of a quote unquote normal life, that everyone just wants me to move on and they don't see my pain and they don't value or validate me. Well, I need to think of other possible interpretations. And I need to practice looking at all the sides of a situation and all of the points of view. And then I have to attest my interpretation and assumptions to see if they fit the facts. So maybe another interpretation is I'm just scared. And I have to look at the things that I can control. I'm still me. I still have all my skills. Perhaps I still have a coach or a therapist or a trusted loved one that I can confide in. I know that I made a decision to pivot, to reestablish myself, to create a life worth living with whatever new thing I'm about to embark onto, journey I'm about to embark onto. And I know that I can pivot. So if I can make different choices to build a life worth living, I can also make different choices to pivot. That's a different point of view. Would I be willing to pivot? Am I willing to radically accept the fact that I have agency and I don't have to externalize my responsibility? I'm assuming in the narrative of fear that nothing is going to work out and I'm unworthy and I should just lay down and die or go back to the hospital or freeze in this space that I'm in. I'm assuming that things are not going to work out, but perhaps they will. And if they don't, I can make a choice to go right back to where I was. I can make that decision at any moment in time. Step 4, ask yourself, am I assuming a threat? Label that threat. Assess the probability that the threatening event will really occur, and then think of as many possible outcomes as you can. When I was taught this skill in DBT, I would go, the outcome is 100% probable that it will occur, the one that I think. So I am scared that I'm going to get to Michigan and everything will fail, or I'll be emotionally vulnerable with my partner, or I'll go through this breakup, or I'll start this school program. And those are all things I've done. And it will not work out because I am not worthy of it working out because my shame speaks. And I would stop there, full stop. I would be like, my therapist doesn't understand me. This DBT stuff is ridiculous. It's never going to help me. But let me challenge that today. What's the threat? The threat is I will feel uncertain and everything might blow up. But what's the probability of that? I mean, I'm capable. I can take things one day at a time. I'm smart. I'm here listening to this podcast. If I need help with school, I can seek help. If I don't like my job, I can choose another one. If my job is too difficult, I can ask for support or help. If I'm having a hard time with social relationships, I can study social relationships and try hard. These are not pull yourself up by your bootstraps. These are little things that you can do every day to ensure that the outcome isn't 100% probable that it will go bad, right? Or you end up doing the opposite, which is making decisions and engaging in behaviors in which the outcome will be 100% probable that it will implode. Like I remember when I was in my doctoral program, if I had been like, I am unworthy, I shouldn't be here, I can't read all this is too much, this is overwhelming, I shouldn't have made this decision, I don't know what I'm doing, I would have flunked out. But I didn't. I started reading and writing and assigning and doing my assignments and trying and carving out the time and asking for help. And when I got negative feedback, I did try as best as I could with the awareness that I had at the time to rework that. And you can do that. So what's the threat? If you're moving, what's the threat? Label it. Think of other outcomes. Could it be that you like your new apartment? Could it be that you find a club that you can join at your new school in the fall? Could it be that you challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and increase your capacity? And then next, ask, what's the catastrophe? Imagine it truly occurring. Imagine coping well with it through problem solving, coping skills, or radical acceptance. So, like I said, you get this new job, or maybe you have to move back home with your family. So maybe that's the catastrophe, and that, you think that it's not going to work out. Or the worst case scenario is you flunk out of school or you don't get accepted into that master's program, or you have to admit to everyone that your decision wasn't the right one. Imagine coping with that. So you didn't get accepted to the master's program that or the school program that you wanted to get accepted into. You could pivot because just like you made a decision to get into that program, grieve, be frustrated at the injustice, have your feelings, and then know that you can pivot and imagine yourself doing that, radically accepting, I wasn't accepted, I need to take another path, open another door. At school, let's say you get there and you do struggle. What do? At schools, they do have places where you can get tutoring. At your job, you begin to struggle. You don't like it. You made a change and it is adversive to you. Have you waited out those 3 months? Have you sought support from your employer for some more training? You can do that. Imagine that catastrophe and then imagine yourself problem solving your way out of it. And then lastly, does my emotion and or its intensity fit the actual facts? So check out the facts of that emotion. If I am scared and I'm overwhelmed and I feel the rush of secondary emotions of the shame and I feel frozen and I feel like I no longer want to do recovery because I am so afraid of that uncertainty, does that match the situation? I think being afraid of a transition is appropriate. I think being a little bit nervous when you don't know what to expect is appropriate. But when you've pressed a pause button now on your recovery work, on your life, because creating a life worth living is giving you so much uncertainty and making you feel so insignificant that your shame identity takes over, we can say that that does not fit the facts. Because if you're making a decision to build a life worth living, that's a good decision. And there's some good in that. All right, everybody. Well, I want you to know that there is hope on your recovery journey. And just because you feel like you're having a spiral or you're experiencing some distress, it doesn't mean that you have regressed or haven't progressed at all. Sometimes the hardest part of recovery is when you've gone through the most difficult spot and you have to now individuate and build that life when there are so many skills that you haven't cultivated along the way. So if that's you today, know that there's hope and you are not alone. You are loved, you are worthy, you are created with a purpose, and I will see you next week for another episode of From Borderline and Beautiful.